I remember the first time I saw him, like it was carved into my memory. It was the fall semester at Ohio State, the campus buzzing with that nervous excitement that always comes with the start of college. I was lugging my backpack across the oval, headphones blasting some indie playlist I was too embarrassed to share with anyone, when I bumped into him outside the library. He had this crooked grin, the kind that made you feel like he knew some secret about the universe that everyone else was missing. I should have looked away, kept walking, but instead I tripped over my own feet, and he caught me. And that was it. Some kind of spark, the kind you read about in those cheesy romance novels but never expect to happen in real life. His name was Matt, and I swear the way he said it, my heart just flipped. We started talking about classes, music, the usual small talk, but then the conversation just clicked. I'd never had that with anyone before. He wasn't like the other guys in my dorm, who were loud and overconfident, always trying to prove something. He was calm, funny in a dry way, and somehow made me feel like I mattered. Our friendship started casually. We'd study together in the library, grab coffee at that little cafe near High Street, and sometimes just wander around campus, talking about nothing and everything. But somewhere in those walks, it became more than friendship, though neither of us said it out loud at first. I didn't see him for a few days one week, and I'll admit, I noticed. I'd scroll through Instagram, hoping for a story or a post, some sign that he was still thinking about me. And then one Friday, he texted me to meet him at the Wexner Center. He had this look, serious but smiling, that made me nervous in the best way. And when he kissed me there, right in front of that massive abstract sculpture, I felt something crack open inside me. I was naive, sure. I had never been in a serious relationship, but it felt like love, or at least the closest thing I knew to it. We moved fast. By the second month, we were official, or at least that's what we told our friends. I started spending nights at his apartment off campus, sometimes him at mine. I met his roommate, Jason, a laid-back guy who seemed to approve of me almost immediately. Matt and I laughed constantly, the kind of laughter that makes your stomach hurt. We were inseparable, and I felt like college finally made sense. Everything else, classes, responsibilities, the constant background noise of other people's lives, faded when we were together. Then came the small things. The first time I noticed something weird, it was subtle. A text he'd get and immediately lock his phone screen, or a call he'd answer in another room and hang up the second I walked in. I brushed it off at first. I told myself I was overthinking it. Matt was private, sure, but that was part of why I liked him, right? Then, over winter break, when I went home to Cincinnati, things started to feel off. He would say he was busy with projects or family stuff, and I'd nod, trying not to feel that familiar twist of doubt. When we came back to campus in January, things escalated. I started noticing him leave in the middle of the night, sometimes for hours, sometimes just a few minutes. At first I thought it was him sneaking out to meet friends or get food, but the frequency and secrecy were different this time. One night I decided to follow him, just for a little while, from a distance. I wasn't prepared for what I saw. He wasn't meeting a friend. He was meeting someone else, a girl. I didn't know her, hadn't seen her before. They hugged, laughed, and then went into a tiny apartment complex just off High Street. I froze, my stomach twisting in a way that made my knees weak. I couldn't move, couldn't think, couldn't breathe. The entire world felt like it had tilted on its axis. All the text he sent me, all the nights we spent together, they suddenly felt like part of a lie I had been too blind to see. I didn't confront him immediately. I couldn't. I went back to my dorm, locked the door, and just sat there, staring at my ceiling, trying to convince myself I had imagined it. Maybe it was some other guy? No, he had that jacket I knew, that stupid hoodie he loved, and the way he laughed, the way he moved, it was him. I wanted to scream, to call him out, but my phone sat on the desk, silent. My thoughts were too loud, too fast, too messy to form into words. I kept replaying the moment over and over, trying to convince myself I could have been wrong, trying not to think about the other girl. The next day I acted normal. I smiled, joked, laughed with him. We studied together in the library, went to lunch, and I forced myself to enjoy it, even though my chest ached. Every glance, every touch from him felt like a betrayal I couldn't yet name out loud. I told myself I'd figure out what to do later, that maybe he had some explanation, but inside, a storm was brewing, one I couldn't escape. Then came the moment I accidentally saw her. I was walking past the same apartment complex when he was supposed to be in class. I saw her, tall, blonde, laughing with him on the balcony like they were sharing a joke only they understood. I froze again, but this time I didn't run. I watched for a few minutes, and what I saw made my chest tighten so hard I thought I might pass out. He kissed her. Not a peck, not a quick hello, a full, lingering kiss that belonged to someone else. And yet it was him.
The same guy who had promised me everything in hushed tones over coffee and in the dark of his bedroom. I walked away, my hands shaking. I don't remember how I got back to my dorm. I don't remember anyone asking me if I was okay. I didn't tell anyone, not my roommate, not my friends. I couldn't. There was something about betrayal that felt too private, too intimate to share. And yet it ate at me, a gnawing, endless ache that I couldn't ignore. I started paying attention to the little things, how he smelled, how his hair fell over his eyes, how he absent-mindedly ran his fingers over his phone when he thought I wasn't looking. Every detail suddenly felt like a clue, a piece of some puzzle I didn't want to solve but couldn't stop trying to. I confronted him eventually, though not in the dramatic, loud way you see in movies. It was a Wednesday night. I asked him where he had been, really, that week. His face shifted slightly, just enough that I knew he was hiding something. He said he had been helping a friend with a project, his voice casual, but his eyes flicked away from mine. I pressed further, my voice trembling, trying not to cry in front of him, trying not to break, and then he admitted it. Not everything, just a sliver of truth, that he had been seeing someone else. Just casually, he said, just like that, as if it were no big deal. I sat there, feeling the floor tilt beneath me, listening to him speak, and part of me wanted to hit him, scream at him, make him feel the sting of what he'd done. But another part of me, the part that still loved him, wanted to understand. I asked why, and he mumbled something about connection and chemistry and timing, words that didn't make sense to me in that moment. My head spun, my chest burned, and the entire room felt like it was shrinking, suffocating me. After he left that night, I stayed in my dorm, staring at my phone, replaying every memory, every laugh, every I love you in my head.
I couldn't reconcile the person I thought I knew with the one who could do something like this. It felt like the ground beneath me had disappeared, like the whole world was a lie I had been living in. And yet, even in the pain, part of me wanted to forgive him. Part of me wanted to go back to that moment in front of the Wexner Center, to believe in the crooked grin, the spark, the way he made me feel alive. I realized, slowly, painfully, that I didn't just love him. I loved the idea of him. The person I thought he was, the life I thought we had, the future I imagined. And that realization hurt worse than the betrayal itself. The next few weeks became a careful dance. I acted normal, smiled in the dining hall, laughed with friends, but inside, I was unraveling. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't focus in class. Every time my phone buzzed, I jumped, half expecting it to be him telling me he loved me, or worse, telling me about her. I became obsessed with knowing who she was, why she mattered, what I had done wrong. And then, one night, I made a decision that would change everything. I wasn't going to wait for him to decide what this meant. I wasn't going to sit quietly while he lived two lives, while I tried to pretend nothing was wrong. I was going to confront it, fully, completely, even if it destroyed us both. I didn't know what I would say, didn't know if I'd be able to stop the flood of emotions that had been building, but I knew I couldn't go on living in this gray area, suspended between love and betrayal. That night, I found myself outside his apartment, my heart hammering so hard it felt like it would burst out of my chest. I rehearsed everything in my head, every word I might say, every accusation I might throw at him. And yet, when I rang the doorbell, and he opened it with that same crooked grin, my resolve faltered. The man who had made me feel seen, wanted, alive, was standing right there, completely unaware of the storm I carried inside me. I didn't know then that this confrontation would unravel more than just our relationship. It would unearth secrets I couldn't have imagined, choices he had made that went beyond casual lies, and a part of him I wasn't sure I wanted to see. But in that moment, as I stared into his eyes, I realized I had crossed a line. There was no turning back. The story we had started together, the love I thought I understood, was about to fracture in ways I couldn't control. I stood there, frozen, the doorframe cutting the light across his face just right so I could see the shadows in his eyes, shadows I had never noticed before. I wanted to yell, wanted to ask him point blank why, wanted to make him pay for every second I'd spent in love with a man who had been living a lie. But instead, my throat tightened, and I just whispered, "We need to talk." He stepped aside, letting me in, and for a second I thought maybe he knew why I was there, that he sensed the storm in me. But his smile, that damn smile, still had that casual, everything's fine vibe that made me want to throw something across the room. We sat on the couch, and I tried to find words. Every time I started, my voice caught, like my emotions had built a dam and now it was crumbling. "Matt," I finally said, "I know about her. I saw you with her." He blinked, then leaned back, like he was trying to measure my reaction before he spoke. It's not what you think, he said slowly, almost carefully. That's when I realized I was beyond being careful. I wasn't in control anymore. Not what I think? You're dating me, Matt. You've been living a double life while we thought we had something real? My voice cracked, and I could see the flicker of guilt, or maybe annoyance, in his eyes. He shrugged, and the gesture felt like a slap. Look, I didn't mean for it to get complicated. I like her, but I like you too. I don't know. It's not like I'm trying to hurt you. His words weren't comforting. They were jagged, uneven, like he was trying to patch a hole that had no bottom. My mind raced. How could someone you loved, someone you trusted, just reduce months of laughter, intimacy, and promises to some half-hearted excuse? I wanted to punch him, scream at him, shove him out of the apartment, but I didn't. I just sat there trying to make sense of it, trying to find a logic that didn't exist. The more he spoke, the worse I felt. He talked about connection and chemistry and exploration, words I didn't even think existed in our context. He said things like he didn't want to hurt anyone, but didn't want to give up anything either. And the worst part? I could see how much he believed his own excuses. That casual shrug, that half smile, it was infuriating. I hated him in that moment more than I thought I was capable of hating anyone. And yet, I still loved him. My brain hated my heart, and my heart hated that I hated him, and I felt dizzy just sitting there. After he left for a few minutes, some excuse about needing air, I sat on his couch, trembling. I didn't cry. I couldn't. Crying would have meant surrender, and I wasn't ready for that. I opened my laptop and started typing notes to myself. Everything I'd seen, everything I'd suspected, every lie that now made sense in a terrifyingly coherent pattern. It was like peeling back layers of paint on a wall, only to find that the wood underneath was rotten. And it was worse than I thought. I didn't sleep that night. I went home to my dorm, curled up on my bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the images of him and that other girl over and over. I tried to imagine explanations, any excuse that could make this less painful. Nothing worked. By morning, I was numb, but also burning inside. I started avoiding him in classes, in the cafeteria, on campus walks. My friends noticed. They asked if everything was okay, and I lied. I said yes. I couldn't tell them the truth. How could I? This was private, intimate betrayal. A week passed. I tried to act normal, but the anxiety and suspicion had become a constant presence. I noticed every glance, every half smile, every laugh with friends, every phone buzz. Every interaction became a test, and every test confirmed what I already knew. Matt had built this parallel life off campus, and I was just a part of it, conveniently included when it suited him. I began to question everything. Did he actually like me, or was I just easy to keep around while he explored something else? Then came the rumor, or maybe I overheard it in the student union. I'm still not sure. Someone mentioned a girl at a party, someone new, someone who had been seen with Matt the week before. My chest tightened. I couldn't stop thinking about her. I didn't even know her name yet, but in my mind she had a life, a room, probably pictures on her walls of them laughing together, while I was alone in my dorm wondering if the guy I loved was making her laugh with the same crooked grin he had given me. I made a choice that night. I needed answers, not explanations, not half-truths, not words that could be twisted. I needed to see it for myself. I stalked him, something I never thought I'd do. I drove past the places he said he'd be, sat in my car outside his apartment, watching shadows move inside. I felt pathetic, guilty, and yet I couldn't stop. Hours passed, and then finally she appeared. Blonde hair tied back, laughing at something he said. They kissed on the balcony again. This time, I didn't flinch. I wanted to, but I didn't. I wanted him to see me there, but I didn't. I wanted to scream, but I stayed in the car, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. The next day, I confronted him again. I wasn't gentle this time. I walked straight into his apartment and threw my backpack down. "Who is she?" I demanded. "Her name, Matt. Who is she?" He froze. That little casual shrug was gone, replaced by something I couldn't read. Fear? Guilt? A flicker of shame? "Her name's Chloe," he said finally. And that was it. Just a name, like dropping a pebble into a canyon. My mind exploded. Chloe. The name sounded innocent, like it belonged to someone normal, like a girl who didn't know half the chaos she was about to step into. I wanted to scream it back at him, to tell him how badly he'd broken me, but I couldn't. Matt tried to explain again. He said Chloe wasn't serious, that it was complicated, that he liked both of us. And that's when I realized this wasn't just cheating. This wasn't a one-time mistake. He had been living this life for months, hiding pieces of himself, convincing himself that he could compartmentalize love, that he could have it all without consequence. And worse, he expected me to understand, to forgive, to continue as if nothing had happened. I laughed at him, bitter and sharp, because nothing about this was funny. You think I can just sit here and act like this is normal? That I can just accept it? I asked. My voice shook, and for the first time, I felt a dangerous edge, a glimpse of the anger that had been simmering under my hurt. He didn't answer, just stared at me with that same crooked grin, softer this time, hesitant, like maybe he finally realized he had pushed too far. I wanted to leave. I wanted to walk out, slam the door behind me, and never see him again. But a part of me, the part that loved him, couldn't. I stayed, because leaving felt like admitting defeat, like giving up on something I wasn't ready to give up on. That night, we didn't fight or scream. We just sat in silence, the weight of betrayal thick between us. I didn't sleep again, lying in his bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to his slow, even breathing, thinking about the lies, the half-truths, the girl named Chloe. Over the next few weeks, things escalated in ways I couldn't have predicted. I started noticing more patterns, more hidden messages and texts, little lies in conversations. I realized he had been extremely careful, calculating even, making sure I never saw the full picture. And yet, I felt guilty. Guilty for loving him, for trusting him, for giving him my time and my heart. I was angry, yes, but also ashamed of myself for not seeing the signs earlier, for letting myself fall so hard. Then came the tipping point. It was a Saturday night, and I went to a party at a friend's house. Matt was there, but not with me. Chloe was there too, and I saw it all in a single, sickening moment. Them laughing together, hands brushing, smiles that belonged to each other in ways that had never belonged to me. I froze at the edge of the living room, every nerve screaming at me, and for a second I thought I might throw up. The betrayal wasn't abstract anymore. It was physical, real, undeniable. He had built a life off campus, a hidden world, and I was just a visitor in it, someone who thought she mattered more than she did. I left without a word. I didn't cry in front of anyone, didn't make a scene. I drove aimlessly, trying to make sense of the chaos in my head. And then, in that moment, I realized that this wasn't just about Matt or Chloe. It was about me, about how I had allowed myself to get swept up in someone else's lies, about how I had trusted too easily, loved too quickly, and ignored the small warning signs that had been there all along. I felt broken, hollow, like I had been erased from my own life. By Monday, I knew I had to decide. Could I confront him, demand closure, demand honesty, or would I just walk away, leave the mess behind, and try to rebuild myself without him? The thought of seeing him again, of looking into his eyes and pretending like nothing had happened, made me want to scream. And yet, somewhere deep down, I knew I needed the truth, even if it hurt more than I could bear. When I finally texted him, asking to meet, my hands shook. I didn't know if it was rage, heartbreak, or desperation driving me, only that I couldn't go on living in this gray space of half-truths and secrets. I needed the whole story. I needed him to admit it, all of it, no excuses, no bullshit. And I knew, somewhere deep inside, that when he finally spoke, nothing about our relationship would ever feel the same again. When I walked into that coffee shop, the one on High Street where we'd had countless lazy Sundays, my hands were still trembling. I had rehearsed what I was going to say over and over in my head, but when I saw him sitting there, sipping on some latte with that same crooked grin, everything I thought I knew about confrontation evaporated. He looked casual, calm, almost like he had no idea that my entire world had been turned upside down in the past month. I wanted to slam my hand on the table, throw his coffee at him, shake him until he understood what he had done, but I just sat across from him and let the silence stretch, letting it crush me slowly. "You showed up?" he said finally, like it was some benign observation rather than the emotional earthquake I had endured. My chest tightened. "Matt," I said, voice low, trembling, "we need to talk. No excuses, no lies, everything, right now." He raised an eyebrow, leaning back, still casual, still somehow untouchable. And that's when I realized he had learned how to protect himself, how to dodge accountability like a professional. He had done this before, or he had at least rehearsed it in his mind enough to make me question my own anger. He sighed, looking down at his cup. "I don't know if you really want to hear it," he said, almost whispering. "But okay, I'll tell you everything." And I leaned in, my heart hammering, the air thick with tension, waiting for the first words that would confirm everything I had already guessed. "It started before we even became serious," he said. His voice was calm, disturbingly calm, as if he was narrating someone else's story.
I met Chloe at a fraternity party my sophomore year. It was nothing at first, just attraction. You know how it is. But we clicked, and it became this thing. It wasn't supposed to interfere with you or anyone else. I felt my stomach drop. It wasn't supposed to interfere, I repeated, disbelief and rage coiling in my throat. Matt, I saw you. I saw you kissing her. You're living a double life. How is that not interfering? He shrugged, like it was nothing. It was complicated. I didn't plan for it to happen this way. I liked you. I still like you. And I like her. I know it sounds insane, but I was trying to figure it out, balance it. My hands were shaking. Balance it? Are you kidding me? People don't balance love like a fucking spreadsheet. My voice cracked and I could feel tears welling up, but I refused to let them fall. I refused to give him the satisfaction of seeing me broken in front of him. He reached out, a hand hovering over mine, like I was going to let him touch me, like I was going to forgive him mid-conversation. I didn't want to hurt you, he said softly.
I know that sounds hollow, but it's true. I never wanted to hurt you. I love you too. That's when everything inside me flipped. Love. He had the audacity to say he loved me after months of hiding, lying, and creating a secret life that involved someone else. My mind scrambled. I wanted to hit him, scream at him, leave and stay forever, all at the same time. I stood up abruptly, chair scraping against the floor, drawing glances from strangers around us. Love doesn't look like this, Matt. Love doesn't have shadows, secrets, or another girl named Chloe sitting on the balcony kissing you. I trusted you. I gave you everything. And you lived a lie. My voice rose, raw and trembling, filled with all the betrayal, anger, and heartbreak I had been holding back for weeks. He didn't flinch, just watched me, almost too calmly, like he was expecting this explosion, like he had rehearsed the moment where I would finally explode in front of him. "You're not listening," he said finally, almost pleading, almost human again. I tried to be honest. I didn't hide everything. I cut him off, my voice sharp, slicing through the cafe like a knife. You didn't hide everything? Matt, you lived a double life for months. You made me feel like our love was real, like we were building something together while you were with her? How is that anything but a lie? He looked down, silent this time, and I realized he had no answer. He couldn't explain it away. There was no logic, no reason, nothing that could justify what he had done. And yet, he still sat there, waiting. Like maybe I would understand, like maybe I would forgive him mid-sentence. I wanted to scream at him, shake him until he realized the chaos he had caused, but all I could do was stare at him, feeling the emptiness spread through me. For the next hour, we sat there, words exchanged but nothing resolved. Every explanation he offered felt like a dagger wrapped in velvet, smooth, calm, almost persuasive, but deadly. He told me about their history, how Chloe and he had known each other since sophomore year, how he tried to figure things out, and how he loved me too. And all I could think was, I loved a man who loved someone else more than he loved me. I had loved a man who couldn't see that you don't figure out love by splitting it in half. I left the cafe that night feeling hollow, like the air itself had been sucked out of me. I drove around aimlessly, past the campus, past the apartment complex where I had first seen him with Chloe. I saw shadows moving behind curtains, the silhouettes of someone else's life I had no part of. I wanted to scream, to throw the car into a ditch, to disappear entirely. And yet I also felt an odd sense of clarity. I realized I couldn't fix him, couldn't change him, and couldn't force him to feel the way I wanted him to. He had built a life that didn't include me entirely, and no amount of pleading, confrontation, or heartbreak could undo that. Over the next week, I started pulling away. It was subtle at first, ignoring his texts, avoiding common spaces, skipping the coffee shop we used to frequent. Every time he reached out, my chest twisted with longing and anger, with memories of everything we had shared and everything he had stolen. I hated him, yes, but I also hated that I couldn't stop thinking about him, that I was still tethered to him even as he destroyed the life I thought we had. Then came the incident that broke me entirely. I was walking back to my dorm after class when I saw him,
holding Chloe's hand as they crossed the street. I froze, my chest tightening so violently it was almost painful. Everything I had tried to ignore, rationalize, or compartmentalize came crashing back with full force. I wanted to run over there, scream, tell her what she didn't know, but I didn't. I just stood on the sidewalk, trembling, watching them like an outsider to the life I had once thought I shared. And in that moment, something inside me snapped. I realized that loving him had become a trap, a cage I had willingly stepped into, and the key had always been in his pocket. That night, I wrote everything down, every lie, every betrayal, every secret I had uncovered. I wrote about the nights I had spent waiting for him, about the mornings I had woken up next to him believing we were real. I wrote about Chloe, about the coffee shop confrontation, about the parties, the hidden texts, the stolen glances, and the quiet desperation of loving someone who didn't love you in return the way you needed. I wrote until my hand cramped, until my notebook pages blurred with tears I refused to let fall on my face. By the time I stopped, it was past 3 a.m., and I was exhausted in a way I hadn't been in months. I realized something terrifying. I was done waiting for him, done hoping he would change, done believing that love could survive betrayal when it was built on deception. And yet, even as I accepted it, a part of me still ached, still wanted him, still wanted to believe in that first spark on the oval, the crooked grin, the way he made me feel alive in those early months. That part of me, the part that loved blindly and fiercely, would haunt me for weeks, months, maybe years. I started to rebuild after that. I joined new clubs, spent more time with friends, and threw myself into classes. But everywhere I went there were reminders, his laugh echoing in crowded halls, the way students in our circle would mention him casually, the fleeting glimpse of someone who looked like him across campus. Every memory was sharp, cutting into me in ways I hadn't anticipated. And yet, I refused to reach out. I refused to call, to text, to confront again. That chapter of my life I decided was over, even if it lingered like a shadow over everything else. And then came the rumor. Not a confirmation, not a story from me, not a witness, but a campus-wide whisper that Chloe and Matt were more serious than anyone realized, that she had met his family, that he was talking about transferring with her next semester. My chest twisted violently at the thought. The man I had loved, the man who had been my world for months, had a life I couldn't touch, a happiness I wasn't allowed to share. I felt the unfairness of it in every bone in my body, the injustice of being erased from someone's story, while still carrying the memories like scars on my heart. I found myself at a crossroads. Part of me wanted revenge, wanted to expose everything, to make him feel even a fraction of the pain I had endured. But another part, the part that had loved him once, knew that fighting him, dragging him down, would only continue the cycle of obsession and heartbreak. The healthiest thing, the hardest thing, was to walk away, fully, without looking back. And so I did, in my own way. I stopped responding to messages, deleted photos, removed reminders. I refused to engage, refused to react, refused to allow him to occupy any space in my life that wasn't mine. And yet, at night, alone in my dorm, I would lie awake, thinking about him, about Chloe, about everything that had been lost. It wasn't just heartbreak, it was betrayal, confusion, love, regret, and anger, all wrapped together in a mess I couldn't untangle. And every time I thought I had moved past it, a memory would resurface, pulling me back into that dark, complicated orbit of what we had once been.
It wasn't until the start of spring semester that I began to understand the weight of what had happened. Classes felt heavier, the campus somehow smaller, more suffocating, like every corner reminded me of him. I tried to focus, professors lecturing, papers due, friends chatting, but nothing could distract me from the quiet, persistent ache of knowing he had created a life I could never be part of. Every laugh I heard on High Street, every couple walking hand in hand, every text notification, it all felt like a cruel reminder of my own love that had been misplaced, wasted on someone who had been living in halves. I started keeping busy with study groups, volunteering at a local shelter, trying to force myself into routines that might pull me out of the spiral I'd fallen into. I told myself I wasn't obsessed, but every time I saw someone with blonde hair or that same casual, crooked grin, my stomach twisted like it had a life of its own. I hadn't realized how deeply I had tethered my happiness to someone else, someone who had not only betrayed my trust, but had also made me complicit in pretending nothing was wrong. It was exhausting, living in a half-world between rage, heartbreak, and nostalgia for what had been beautiful before it became toxic. Then came the unexpected part: guilt. I hated that I felt guilty, hated that my own mind had betrayed me into questioning myself. I had loved him fiercely, blindly, and maybe that was naive, but it had been real. Every date, every laugh, every night lying awake beside him had been mine, not hers, and yet I couldn't stop replaying moments, wondering if I had missed something, some subtle sign that would have allowed me to avoid this. I hated him, yes, but I hated that part of myself that had trusted him so completely, that had built a life around a lie. A few weeks later, I ran into Chloe on campus. She was laughing with friends, radiant, unaware, or at least pretending to be, of the turmoil she had caused. Our eyes met for a brief, brutal second, and I realized I couldn't hate her. She hadn't asked to be part of this mess. She was just another human, caught up in the choices of someone else. But that moment gave me clarity. I didn't need to destroy her, didn't need to scream, didn't need to ruin anyone. What I needed was to reclaim myself, to take my love, my trust, my vulnerability, and direct it somewhere that deserved it. I couldn't take him back, and I didn't want to. I stopped thinking about Matt as often, though it wasn't instantaneous. Healing doesn't work that way. There were still nights I'd lie awake, picturing him and Chloe, picturing every stolen kiss I hadn't witnessed, every secret thinner, every whispered word. It burned like acid in my chest, but over time the burn dulled into a steady ache, a reminder of what I had endured and survived. I wrote about it, poured everything into journals and late-night typing sessions that became almost therapeutic. I didn't write to confront him or anyone else. I wrote to untangle myself from the emotional wreckage he left behind. One night, sitting on my dorm balcony, I realized something terrifying and liberating at the same time. I didn't need closure from him. I didn't need an apology, a confession, or even an acknowledgement. I needed to move forward without him, with the lessons hidden in the heartbreak. The love we had shared, the months I had given him, the stolen nights and whispered secrets, they had all been real, even if he had treated them like collateral. And that realization, as painful as it was, gave me strength. By the end of the semester, I had started a new chapter. I met new people, made new friends, and began tentatively exploring dating again, not with the blind trust I had given Matt, but with caution, awareness, and respect for myself. I wasn't seeking revenge, and I wasn't seeking him. I was seeking me, and in the quiet moments between classes, in late-night walks around campus, in cups of coffee sipped alone while staring out at the oval, I felt the faint stirrings of happiness that didn't depend on anyone else. I never confronted him again. I didn't need to. The truth had already sunk in, the reality of what he had done, the betrayal, the two lives he had led. I carried the memory of him like a scar, painful, permanent, but a part of my story, not the whole of it. And slowly, imperceptibly at first, I realized I could still laugh, still trust, still love, even if it was different than before. Stronger, harder earned. My life was mine again, messy and flawed and real, without the weight of someone else's duplicity dragging me down. Looking back now, I can remember the early days, the oval, the library, the coffee shop, and I can remember the warmth, the spark, and the promise of everything that felt perfect. But I can also remember the lies, the hidden life, the heartbreak, and the betrayal. And I understand now that loving someone who doesn't love you back the way you need them to is not a failure. It's a lesson, a brutal emotional curriculum in learning the boundaries of trust, the resilience of the human heart, and the power of reclaiming yourself when someone else tries to define your worth. I thought college love was messy, but what I learned that year wasn't just about messy relationships. It was about the raw, painful, complicated reality of people, the choices they make, and the consequences that ripple through your life. I learned that love can be intoxicating, destructive, and beautiful all at once. I learned that betrayal can cut deep, but surviving it teaches you something no textbook ever could. And I learned, painfully and with every fiber of my being, that the only life I can truly control is my own, and no one else's double life can take that away from me. Even now, walking across campus, I sometimes see couples laughing together,
arms wrapped around each other, the kind of effortless intimacy I once thought I had. And I feel a flash of pain, yes, but also gratitude, because I survived the heartbreak. I reclaimed my agency, and I'm living a life that is entirely, irrevocably mine. That crooked grin, the stolen kisses, the hidden texts, they are all memories now. Shadows, but they no longer have power over me. I am not broken. I am not lost. I am awake. I am aware. And I am free.